Atari.
All right. All right. As many times as I heard this theme song, I'm guessing I never let it play out long enough because I never heard that voice before towards the end here. Uh, anyway, welcome back to Memory Lane. And this week, our destination is Space Invaders. And going upon my research here and doing my homework, this is, as of now, the oldest game I've talked about on this podcast here. But it's a game, just like Pac Man, has been played out and ported and recreated and just spread out through the generations to the point where even today you can play the original Space Invaders or like an HD remaster of it or a different rendition of it. It's just been redone so many times. It's just that much of a classic. It is that good, and it's considered to kind of revolutionize gaming in especially the arcade era. So, as we get into Space Invaders, as always, get into the facts. Then I'm going to share my memories of it, just like any other episode, right? All right. Space Invaders, released in 1978. All right, it's a shmup. See, as gamers call them shmups, okay? It stands for shoot 'em up. It's a shoot 'em up, and it was released by Taito or Tato. I can't remember how you say it, but it's definitely one of the first ever endless gameplays and one of the first ever fixed shooters. All right, so it was definitely like it was a pioneer of that type, and definitely kind of kicked off a whole different line of gaming in the arcade era. And it was designed by Tomohiro Nishikado, and it drew inspiration. Tomohiro, the designer, he drew inspiration from games like Gunfight and Breakout, and even was inspired by Star Wars, the movies, Star Wars. In order for him to completely design this game, he had to design custom hardware and development tools to complete the development of the game. So, in order for him to actually achieve what he's been trying to achieve with this game, he's kind of had to not only build a game from scratch, but build the tools from scratch to finish building the game from scratch. All right. So, Tomohiro, who I believe is like 82 years old now, something like that, uh, he he was in it, man. Like this guy had a goal and wanted to achieve the goal, and fuck, did he ever? Space Invaders is one of the most influential and most recognized games ever. You know, probably not the most recognized game, but it's definitely one of the most. I probably see a lot of people will recognize Pac-Man more than Space Invaders, but Space Invaders is definitely it's up there, man. By 1982, just 4 years after it was released, uh, based upon my research, it said it had reached a good 3.8 billion with a B dollars in revenue. And with the inflation calculator, that's a good $10 billion in today's time. It's insane. First of all, the same thing with Pac-Man. It's like, what do you do with $1 billion? Like once you like, sure, the creator didn't get 1,000% of the profits. Like, the money had to go towards, licensing and Taito, of course, and then to build and fix the machines and create more games and all the ports that it came out 1982. So I'm assuming by then it was already on Atari. So you had to create a ports for that stuff and what have you. But still, like, that's $3.8 billion. Like, that's just not easy money to piss away. Like, you know how much shit you have to buy and spend your money on for you to go broke from a billion, much less 3.8 or even 10 billion in today's standards? That's a lot of shit. I I don't have that kind of money. I never will be a billionaire, but you know, shit, I just get happy if I have $10 I can spend on useless shit, but I don't. It also says here, upon my research, it reached a good 450 million with an M dollars in net profit. Okay, so that means to Toshihiro and Taito and whatnot, they pocketed that money, which that's not exactly chump change either. That's that's still, you can still piss away a lot of that money and still be set to not have to work ever again. Like that's crazy. That is crazy. And it says right here, which based upon the amount of money it made, it's one of the highest grossing media franchises of all time, and is considered one of the greatest ever, having ushered in the golden age of arcade gaming. So when it comes to arcade gaming, Space Invaders kicked the door open, and then all the other games like Pac-Man and Galaga and whatnot were able to walk through the door, while Space Invaders held it open. You know, and then about 1 year after its release, 1 year, it became the industry's all-time bestseller. By the end of the year, by the end of the year after it was released, it hit $670 million in revenue and profit, which in today's standards with inflation is about 3.3 billion with a B, billion dollars. Now, this is just upon the research that I did a day ago. That's God, man, like what would you do with that kind of money in the let's see. It came out in 1978, so it's 1979 when that number became a thing. And 1979, I guess we just go ahead and say the 80s as well. What would you do with that kind of money? Because the world wasn't as expensive then. Sure, technology wasn't where it is today, but it definitely was at a point to make that kind of money. To the fact that that money translated to today's rates and today's currency is you're a billionaire at that point. Come on. There's literally not a whole lot I can say about the success of this game. Let the numbers speak for itself. But Space Invaders is a game that I played as a kid. I remember on the Atari. Now I'm not old enough to experience the Atari while it was fresh. You know, my mother kept hers when she was a kid, and when I was a kid, she brought it up to me because I was a gaming kid. I was playing Super Nintendo and PlayStation. You know, Game Boy. And she brought up like, look what I got. It's an Atari. I'm like, oh, here's a bunch of games, and at that time I was already familiar with Pac-Man, so I was like, oh, there's Pac-Man. But then I was introduced to all the others like Dig Dug and Space Invaders here. I think she had Frogger too. I already knew what Frogger was. I played Frogger on computer when I would go to my grandparents. It's just what I'm doing now. It was destiny since I was a kid to kind of bring this hobby to the forefront. So anyway, Space Invaders. I played it and I was just like, oh wow. Like of course the Atari was just one joystick and one button. It's not very hard to kind of get the gist of what you're supposed to do here. Move left to right and shoot. There it is. There's the instructions. Once I figured that out, it's like, oh, of course I didn't beat it on my first try. But I managed to beat it, Space Invaders, a couple times. It's an addicting game after a while, especially after your first time playing it. Because like when you clear out all those spaceships, the alien ships, and there's that one left, and that motherfucker moves left and right faster than all hell. You have to come up with a way. You have to not accuracy and precision is a thing you need to learn with this game in order to get that last ship because it's the hardest ship because it moves fast, and if it touches the ground before you shoot it, well, you lose. Anybody anybody remember the episode of Futurama where they were doing this? I think it's called the What If machine. Like, what if a life were more like a video game that Fry asked, and the world's being taken over by aliens. So you see like the Space Invaders and Cubert's there and Pac-Man, General Pac-Man, and so Fry's controlling the ship, which is the tank in Space Invaders, and he's shooting all the alien ships. which happened to be the same alien ships from Space Invaders, and he had trouble getting the last one. And everyone's freaking out. I was like, it's like, oh, I can never get the last one. My brother always got it for me. And everyone's freaking out. I was like, oh, because if you know Futurama, Fry was frozen. So all of his relatives are dead in the past, 1,000 years in the past. But, the fact that the whole reason I bring this up because one is a Space Invaders reference, but also Futurama is based in the year 3000. So even in the year 3000, they're still talking about Space Invaders, which came out in the year 1978. Which is, you know, over 1,000 years since the release of the game. So they're kind of sending a message like these arcade games are here to stay, and which they are. I mean, I have a port of it on the Super Nintendo. And that version of the game came out in the '90s when the original came out in '78. So, like I said, I can go on Google right now, type in Space Invaders, and play it on my browser with my keyboard and either my mouse or my space bar or whatever they have me use to shoot. But it's just one of those games that have been ported and stretched out and redone and remastered and this and that and that and this so many times. There's even arcade one up about it. You can play Space Invaders on it. I think it's both the if it's not both the Pac-Man Miss Pac-Man one, then I think it's the Galaga Galaxian one. I think I haven't really looked at that one so much, but I want to say it's on one of the Pac-Man ones. But it's just a classic. It really is. You know, it's accrued that much money for a reason. Like it ate up a lot of people's quarters back in the day because it was addicting. Like you always get to that last ship, but could kill the last ship. You know, I remember when I did, I was like, woo. But it was different times. '70s and '80s. Not everyone had TVs in their homes, much less a console to play it on. So you would have to, if you want to play video games, you got to leave the house, go to the gas station, go to the corner store up the street, go to the laundromat, go to the arcade itself, maybe the movie theater. Those are the places you played your video games back then. You know, it's like, okay, I got $3 in quarters. Cool. I'm gonna go to the Stop and Shop up the street here, play Space Invaders for a good hour. You know, it's it was such a different time back then. Like I wasn't around. Like I did an episode about our arcades and how like I was brought into the world kind of at the ass end of that, where you actually could go to an actual arcade that wasn't a movie theater. But it's still like I still personally wish it was something I got to experience. Like, okay, so I got $3 in quarters, and my friend has another couple dollars. Oh, they have 50 cents in quarters. Cool. That's at least one or two extra lives right there. And we just try to get the high score and try to make a name for ourselves like the bunch of nerds we were. But, I didn't do that. I was born in the '90s. So by then, we all had Nintendos and PlayStations and Segas in our house, Game Boys in our pocket. The internet was a thing. So some of us who had money had the internet and computers in our house, playing computer games, the big box PC games. It's it's different. Sure, it's still retro, still nostalgic. I have my original PS2 and Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, PlayStation 1, Super Nintendo. It's preserved that shit, man. I just kind of wish, the days of arcades were still preserved. Like I said, there's still barcades, and still you can still find good active working pinball machines a lot of places and arcade machines, but it's just not the same because now it's just like, well, why do I need to waste gas on my car to play this game where I can just do it for free on my computer where I pay 60, 70, 80 plus dollars a month on my internet bill. It's crazy, but the fact that Space Invaders has not been lost in the shadows and not lost in time and is still talked about today and brought up as references a lot, like the movie Pixels with Adam Sandler, like I said with Futurama, uh I think Stranger Things made a Space Invaders reference, so it's still in high regards talked about today, and it's cool that those old games are still being exposed today, so that way the younger generation can be familiar with it. If for the younger generations who are nerds and want to get into this hobby, not just like gaming and collecting, but just like technology in general, can see how it all came apart, like how it, technology brought us this and that to this and then to this and the third. I think it's cool. I think it's cool how they still reference those things and still bring it up and still kind of show how everything's been revolutionized and redone and revamped with just modern technology and modern sciences and modern studies to bring some of these classics like Pac-Man and Space Invaders and just do them again, but better with modern graphics, modern colors, modern sounds, modern controllers and consoles. Now we have, Space Invaders on the computer. Now we have Space Invaders on disc. Now we have all these arcade games on disc, you know, not just a cartridge, not just a machine that you have to pay to play. It's there in your hands to play with in a matter of seconds. And I think that's cool. And I believe they released a Space Invaders 2, which I didn't know that. I never did, never played it, never saw it. I'm just talking about the original OG Space Invaders, okay? The one we all know of, and yes, the one that you're picturing in your head is the one I'm talking about. Because I didn't know there was a part 2. And I heard a lot of people didn't much care for part 2. I don't know. I haven't played it. I need to check that out. Kind of wish I did before this, but like I said, this is all about the original, classic, old school Space Invaders, the game that kind of revolutionized gaming. It kind of brought arcade gaming to the forefront and kind of just took over the world of entertainment by storm. Billions of dollars just for this. And you look at it and you play it, especially today, if you've been gaming for a long time, let's just say like I have, and I've seen gamings go through just years of development and improvement and just complexity to where like we have video games that look lifelike. We have virtual reality. We have, our phones, so games are in our pocket now to play with at any time other than you don't need a Game Boy with batteries anymore. You just pull out your phone. To kind of go back and play like the old school golden age arcade games, it is a very simple looking, simple playing, brain rot kind of game. Like I said, you just need one joystick and one button to shoot. That's it. Left, right, shoot. That's it. It's so simple, so easy, and it's addicting. It is. These old arcade games knew what they were doing, man. It's very addicting. To where like, damn, just I gotta get that last ship. I have to get that last alien ship. I have to beat this. It just that's just how, especially today, even some of these games, like I just have to do it. I'm so close, I might as well just do it. And that's how you pump more quarters in. So that's how the $3 in quarters that you have, which is 12 quarters you have in your hands, all 12 quarters are gone in a matter of seconds because you just had to do it. And whether you did it or not, great, you beat the game, but did you beat the high score? Is your name on top of that list? Oh, you need to find more quarters. You need to figure out how you're going to do that. You know? And that's how kids got the entertainment back then and all the way up through the late 90s for the most part. It wasn't until the mid to late 90s. I mean, sure, uh, the early to mid 80s, and we got Nintendo coming out. But still, like, it's not everyone had Nintendos. Those systems were complex for the time, and it costed an arm and a leg at the time, according to, you know, the finances and currency of the 80s. But, like, what was easier? Buying a Nintendo with all the hookups and controllers and accessories and games to hook up to the one TV you had in your house, or scrapping together a handful of quarters and going up the street or across the street or next door to the laundromat to play whatever game or to play the arcade at the Stop and Shop or at the 7-Eleven or at the grocery store. It was cool, and I think it's cool how some places still tend to have those things. Like, I still see claw machines around, which are whatever. I still see some arcade machines out and about, you know? Some places have arcade one-ups because it's hard to find those old school, uh, arcade machines working and for a good price. Those arcade one-ups are easy to put together, and they're like $300, and you have, like, you know, 10 games on them. So it was so much easier to get those. But still, I think it's just cool how to expose in generation. Like, okay, you're used to a touchscreen, you're used to a controller. How about you play it how these games were played back when mom and dad were kids, or your grandparents, depending on how old the kid is playing. I'm just, I trust me. I love my PS5. I love my Switch. I love my PS2. I love my Super Nintendo. I love the Sega. But I also love the arcade. I love my arcade one up. I love having that in my collection. I would love to have one with Space Invaders on it. I would love to have all the ports of Space Invaders because this game is addicting, and I would love to check out Space Invaders too. I would love to see how that kind of got its way and how it kind of differentiates with the first one because it came a long way. Again with the references, it's still brought up today. It's in pop culture. Okay, we all know what Space Invaders. We all know what that little tank looks like. We all know the two or three different shapes of the alien machine or alien machines. Sure, let's call them that. Flying machines, UFOs, ships. You know, we all know that you're at the bottom, they're at the top, and there's four little barricades or shields to kind of help you hide behind because they do shoot back at you. You only get, I think, 3 lives. And then you have to beat the game, but also beat the high score. Because if you remember, there's also another kind of weird little ship, little UFO type thing at the very top of the screen above all the ships that quickly scrolls a past. And if you shoot that, you'll get like I think it was like 1,000 extra points or maybe 5,000 extra points, something like that. And I think just power ups or something like that. And just kind of, you got to get that high score, man. You got to get that high score. If first place is ABC and they have 50,000 points, and here you are, of course, little smart ass kid, your name on the machine is ASS, because that's what all of us did. You're number two, you got to get that number one spot. You have a reputation to uphold. you know, it wasn't like it is today with the Super Smash Brothers tournaments or Mortal Kombat or even sports like Madden or Call of Duty or shit like that. Like, oh, look at how good I am. It's like, oh, everything moves faster and you have 5 million buttons. This was one joystick and one button moving slow as shit. you know? So it's still to this day, don't know how kids manage to get those high scores. Like the amount of quarters they had to put in, not only to beat the game, but also to beat the high score and set the new record. Reminds me of the episode of Everybody Hates Chris, where he would go to Doc's store and play that game. It wasn't he played Asteroids, which Asteroids is going to get an episode on here too, and he had to get that high score. He had to get that high score, and the amount of quarters he would pump into that machine. You know, uh, I think I gave this game enough flowers as I could. Not a whole lot of meat on this bone, but there's a lot of nostalgia and a lot of info on this to where it started to where it is now. To where it kind of literally opened the door for arcade gaming to now it's just sitting on the internet to be played at any times. I might play Space Invaders after this. I might. It's fun. I don't hate it. I like it. But for now, just gonna give this game its flowers, like I do with all the other classics I talk about on this. I just love the fact that you all are getting a kick out of this too. I'm seeing my downloads go up. That's awesome. We are now well above 100 downloads. Uh, Getting closer to 100 subscribers on YouTube, man. That's cool. I find it so cool that a lot of you out there like what I'm doing. Like I'm just doing this for a hobby, you just kind of show love for my hobby of gaming, and it's just gaining the attention that it's getting, that's cool. As saturated as this community is with streamers and YouTubers and other gaming podcasters, especially retro gaming, I'm finding my people. It's cool. And I'm having fun, and I'm glad you are too. So be sure to follow my socials, Facebook and Instagram at Kevin Gill Gaming. Follow my YouTube, subscribe, man. I got videos up there. I did a full playthrough of SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, uh, Super Mario World. You know, I got some episodes of The Evil Within up there. Starting to upload Batman Arkham Asylum. Check that out. I'm having fun with all that. Of course, follow the podcast. Please follow the podcast. Please share everything with your friends, man. Give me more exposure. I know a lot of people out there love what I'm talking about because I sure maybe what I'm doing is kind of rudimentary. I'm not no pro here. I'm just some dude with a microphone talking about some of his favorite games of the past. That's all I'm doing. You know, just having a good time. All right, y'all. I'm out.